Hey, Jim. Thanks so much for joining me today. So here's the deal. You wrote a great blog for us back in 2019 about workforce consulting as it relates to culture. This has been a blog that has been very well received. It continues to be one of our highest read blogs. We thought, let's revisit that. Like 2019 and 2025 aren't exactly the same. Do you remember anything big happening in between that time span?
Yeah, a little bit has changed, Casey. Yeah, the pandemic was earth-shattering in terms of what it did to how we all operate and impacted cultural needs and demands throughout the workforce.
Yeah, so let's start right there, right? Like what trends, what things, what's different now than 2019 as you're engaging with employers? What are they talking about differently or more in 2025 than they were in 2019?
Yeah, well, there's a ton. That's a great question. And the reality is, a lot has changed. The biggest thing that's the most probably present for everybody, and that is just the fundamental demand for flexibility. The demand and appreciation for flexibility was always great. But after people tasted the remote work environment in many cases, they've appreciated the fact that they don't have to commute, that they can work from home, they have a little more flexibility with their hours, et cetera, et cetera. So the demand for flexibility has skyrocketed.
Mm. Makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. Anything else there, right? I mean, I think our turnover rates went way up. Like what other trends have impacted
Yeah,
how companies
so
are thinking about culture?
yeah, two other things that are really top of mind that were big. One is turnover rates just skyrocketed, right?
Mm.
In many cases, we saw turnover rates three times higher than what they were just 2 years earlier during the pandemic. And that was really painful and it was intense. And now that is settling down. But turnover rates today are still much higher than they were historically. And they continue to be on a trend line that tells us that we have to be very aware that culture matters. And we have to be very aware that turnover is very costly to organizations. So we need to kind of take the actions necessary to minimize turnover. So that's another one of the big changes. Flexibility, turnover, oftentimes culture and compensation related on the turnover side. But then the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion movement sort of really accelerated during COVID. And because, the pendulum always swings back and forth. The pendulum swung one way and now it's gone the opposite way. But a lot of good organizations today are recognizing, because in some cases they can't have formal DEI programs, right? Because of government mandates, et cetera. But in other cases, what they've done is they said DEI is misunderstood. So we're going to rebrand our initiatives, but more importantly, they're just really focusing on inclusion, making people feel included and providing equity so that people have the tools and resources and environment to be really successful in their job. And those are things that just fundamentally help the productivity and the engagement and the growth of an organization. So really, the three big ones, right? Flexibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and turnover. Those were the three biggest things that probably today we're still seeing an impact from COVID.
Yeah, and very eloquently said as it relates to D, and I appreciate that perspective. I heard one word in there as you were talking about turnover that I want to press the bruise on a little bit, which was compensation. How are companies thinking about compensation in today's day and age?
Yeah, so compensation has become a big issue, right? And I shouldn't say that it has become because it's been now for a few years. But it's classic economics 101, supply and demand. The supply of the workforce does not match the demand in terms of the job openings that we have or the jobs that we have in the economy. So we have more jobs than we have workers.
Mhm.
And because there's a shortage, that just drives the price up. Then we also had a period of inflation, right? So you combine a shortage of workers plus inflation, and it's really driven compensation rates up at a faster pace than it had gone up historically over the prior 20, 25 years. So compensation rates just in general have, a lot of companies are just playing catch up just to kind of be competitive again. And that has been a huge a huge issue, and it's a little bit of a bugaboo for companies because it creates more inflation, and more inflation creates more demand for higher wages. So it's a little bit of this whole circular dynamic
Mm,
going on that creates an issue for companies and frankly for workers.
I'm sure we have some more great blogs on that as well. Happen to know that we do. A personal plug, right? In terms of that great work that you and others at EDSI are helping companies to think about more deeply. All right, you're getting close to the end. I think I only have two more questions for you. You're doing great.
All right.
So just give me from your personal experience, right? Like, do you have any recent client engagements that you could share with us in terms of how culture has impacted the performance or the situation of a company that you've worked with?
Yeah, there's one that's top of mind for me that we've worked on cultural transformation with. And when we started working with them, which is right at just before the pandemic hit,
Okay.
their turnover was over 60% organizationally. And today, we've worked on cultural transformation. Today, they're down to about 30%. Some months, the annualized run rate gets as low as 25, 26%. So they've really improved a lot there, and that's all cultural transformation. But the other side of that too is it's become easier for them to recruit. The
Hmm.
time that positions are vacant is shrinking because they're getting a better employer brand. So it's
Yeah.
helping them not only with the recruiting, but it's also helping them with the retention.
Perfect. All right. Summarize for us. Is culture important? What does the data tell us? Have we seen any updates in any of that data or that knowledge that we have now?
Yeah, great question. Tons of data out there, the studies that exist from McKinsey, from Deloitte, you name it. A lot of the really large firms have done studies in this space. We did our own study. We compared Glassdoor scores among peer companies. For example, American Airlines versus Delta Airlines, right? We looked at their Glassdoor scores, which is sort of one of the key scores that you can get from employees about the culture of the organization. And then we compared their profitability rates. Profits divided by sales is your return on sales, and that's a measure of how profitable they are. And what we found is about 90% of the time, the peer company that had the better Glassdoor score was also significantly more profitable. So you're going to be more profitable. There's also lots of studies out that tell us that companies that have higher engagement and better cultures have faster growth rates.
Hmm.
So you tend to see more profitable, faster growing companies that focus their efforts on having a great culture.
There you go. The data proves it, Jim. The data, it's the right thing to do, and you can be a lot more profitable.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh, well, thanks for joining me. We will update the blog below here too, with some of that great information, some updated data, some of those research studies that Jim was referring to as well. So check it out. But mostly, Jim, thanks for joining us today, helping us to get a quick update on what the heck in the world has changed. But culture still remains at the forefront of a really important part of that each company should be considering in their growth, their profitability, and their people strategies.
Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it.